Hey everyone, welcome back to Strange Mind 6. I'm your host Ruby, and today we're going to be getting back into Strange Things Are Happening in Creepers, Pen Pals by Edgar Hyde. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and grab a snack, grab a drink, or sit back and relax. And let's get to it. Chapter 3 Class Photos. Marcy volunteered to pick up all 3 photos and got in line outside the principal's office. Elise was 2 people in front of her. "Hey, Marcy, how are you doing now?" She smiled. "That was some display you put on this morning." "I'm okay," Marcy replied. "You must have been a little shaken up when you realized the direction the ball was going." "Next!" came a loud voice from just inside the principal's office before Elise could reply. Elise stepped forward. "See you later, Marcy," she said as she picked up her photo and walked off down the hallway. Marcy sighed. Why was she feeling so guilty about the whole incident when Elise had played an obvious part and yet seemed to be shrugging the whole thing off? Maybe that was what happened when boys became interested in you. Soccer fields became an insignificant part of your life, and lip gloss took over. She wondered if she'd ever feel that way, but couldn't help but question whether boys would ever be interested in her. Maybe she should dye her hair. Marcy handed the small package to Natasha. "I gave Olivia hers." Marcy was out of breath from hurrying down the hallway. "She says she'll see you in class. I've got geography, so I'll catch up with you later." "Thanks, Marcy. See you later." Natasha stuffed the photo in her backpack. She'd have more time to look at it later. She took her place in Mr. Jenkins' French class, as usual sitting somewhere near Olivia. She liked French, and even more so since Mr. Jenkins was more than a little good-looking. She could listen to his almost perfect accent and look at his ruggedly handsome face every day and not fall asleep once. She smiled briefly at Olivia before opening her textbook. Just before the end of the school day, Natasha realized she'd forgotten to get the dry cleaning her mom had asked her to pick up when she was half asleep that morning. She'd have to run all the way if she was going to make it before it closed. She hoped Olivia remembered they had plans for this evening. She'd pass her a note just in case. The bell rang and Natasha jumped up right away. She pressed the note into Olivia's hand. "Gotta run," she said. "See you later." Olivia clasped the note as she tried not to drop her books, pens, and backpack, and watched Natasha almost run from the classroom. "I wonder where she is going in such a rush," Olivia thought. "I'll find out tonight, I guess." "Did you pick up the dry cleaning?" Natasha's mom shouted, as the front door slammed. "Yes, Mom, I remembered," Natasha shouted back, breathing a sigh of relief that her memory hadn't failed her. She gave Tommy's sleeping face a quick kiss as she passed his room. He really wore himself out, so he still needed a short afternoon nap. Then she went into her own room to change out of her dreaded uniform, sweatpants and t-shirt on. She flopped onto her bed, hands behind her head. I guess I better check if I have any homework now, because I probably won't get around to doing it later, she thought. As she picked up her backpack, she rummaged around in the bag, and she found the forgotten class photo. Oh, the class photo, she thought. This should be hilarious, if previous years are anything to go by, she thought. She tore off the cellophane and searched the sea of faces for her own. There she was, hair pushed behind her ears, with little wisps escaping from either side. She could never get it to look even remotely smooth, except for the year her mom had taken her to a salon to have it put up for a school dance she was going to. The girl at the salon had tried her best, but even she had a hard time getting it all under control. There had been so much hairspray on it that Natasha decided she preferred it to look messy rather than stuck together on top of her head. But look, there was Elise and Olivia standing together and Marcy in the front row. She was shorter than the others, so the photographer had suggested it would be better for her to be toward the front of the class. Marcy said later she would have worn her new platform shoes. Then she wouldn't have had to split up from her friends. Elise had smiled at this, though not as widely as she had smiled for the cameraman. She was so photogenic. Just look at the way she looked at the camera. Natasha's eyes scanned the rest of the photograph quickly. Her eyes came to rest on the right-hand side of the back row. A small, pale girl stood slightly apart from the others, her eyes not looking into the camera at all. Who on earth is that? Thought Natasha. She'd never seen the girl before. Was it someone from another grade who'd been put with theirs at the last minute? She didn't remember anyone being brought in. Or maybe it was someone new altogether. But no, new students always cause such a stir. She couldn't possibly have missed out on that happening. Who was she? Olivia would surely know. She looked at her watch, only 5:30. Olivia was supposed to come over at about 7 that night. They were going to plan their costumes for the Halloween dance on Friday night. Natasha wanted to go as Cleopatra, the Queen of the Nile, and her mom had promised to help her make her wig. It would also be a good excuse to put lots of makeup on and wear jewelry halfway up her arms. She put the photo back in her backpack and went downstairs to find a snack. Chapter 4. Another note. Olivia looked at the note again. See you at 7:30 at the cemetery. Look for Susanna Craigson's tombstone. Olivia was utterly confused by the note. She thought tonight was for discussing costumes, not an eerie night at the cemetery. It was so unlike Natasha. She wasn't exactly brave when it came to anything to do with graves and old cemeteries, and especially not at 7 o'clock at night. Just when it was beginning to get dark, Olivia sighed a deep sigh and stuffed the note into her jacket pocket. After she helped her mom clear the dishes, she'd get changed and go meet her friend. No doubt all would be revealed once she met up with Natasha. 5 minutes past 7, Natasha was late. Olivia had found the tombstone fairly easily, as it was positioned near the front of the graveyard and could be seen clearly from the road. Olivia was grateful she'd worn her heavy jacket because it was beginning to get really cold. She pulled up her collar and dug her hands deeper into her pocket. At 7:10, Olivia heard a voice. Olivia. She turned and saw a figure come from the direction at the cemetery gate. Hurry up, Natasha, she said. What were you doing in there? It was in that split second, she told Natasha later, that she realized Natasha wasn't in fact Natasha at all. The person coming towards her was smaller than her friend, and she walked with a pronounced limp. Olivia tried to see the girl more clearly, but dusk had just started to fall, and she couldn't quite make out her features. As she approached slowly, hindered by the limp, Olivia was able to see that the girl had long, almost golden hair, curled in ringlets, that framed her face and cascaded down her back, and she appeared to be in trouble. Are you okay? Olivia asked. The last thing she felt like doing was standing there offering to help. For some reason, the approaching girl frightened her. Olivia shivered. Don't be such a baby, she thought. It's just the fact that you're right beside a cemetery. It's getting dark and the trees are casting dark shadows. This little conversation with herself only made her feel worse, though. And she found herself hoping Natasha would hurry up. A bit of moral support would be great. The girl had stopped now, almost directly across from Olivia. Olivia was then aware of the strange clothes the girl was wearing. Her dress was long and frilled at the cuffs, and she wore a little matching bonnet over her curls. She wore a funny built-up shoe on her right foot, and this was the leg which had seemed to drag behind her as she walked. The girl looked directly at Olivia, and Olivia noticed for the first time there was an almost ethereal quality about her. Her skin was so pale that it was almost translucent, and her eyes seemed to be wet with tears. Are you Olivia Golden? She whispered. I must find her. Please help me. She is in great danger. I must warn her. She reached out her hand toward Olivia's, but it didn't touch her. Instead, the girl's hand seemed to go right through Olivia's, bringing with it a cold sensation and cold wind that chilled her very soul. Olivia was now frozen to the spot with fear. She was so cold that her teeth began to chatter, and all she could think was she had to get out of there. Please, you must listen to me, the girl said again. It was at this point that Olivia was unfrozen. She turned from the pale-haired girl and ran faster than she had ever run before. All the way along the pavement she ran, sometimes stumbling over the cracks until she could see Natasha's house, warm and welcoming in the distance. She didn't even knock on the door. She just burst in and ran up the stairs to Natasha's bedroom, pushing Natasha aside as she jumped up to see what the commotion was. Olivia, what on earth? Olivia was standing next to the window and had pulled back the curtain. "Turn off the light," she instructed Natasha. "Not until you tell me what's happening," Natasha replied from the bed where she had fallen. "Turn off the light!" Olivia screamed. "Or I'll do it myself." All right," answered Natasha as she jumped to flip the switch. "Keep your voice down. You'll wake Tommy." She joined Olivia at the bedroom window to look outside, although she had no idea what she was looking for. "Look, there she is." Olivia was almost hysterical. Natasha looked out of the window to see Marcy approaching the house. "It's Marcy," said Natasha. "She called just after 6 o'clock tonight to ask if she could come over and help with our costumes. What's wrong with that?" It was then that she noticed that Olivia's hand and practically her whole body were shaking. "Olivia, you have to calm down and tell me what happened out there. I have no idea what's going on. Come and sit on the bed with me." Olivia allowed herself to be led to the bed, where she promptly sat down and burst into tears. Marcy had arrived and knocked on the front door. Tommy woke up and started to cry. Mrs. Morris answered the door and brought Darcy in. "Do me a favor, sweetie," she said. "Go and start heating some milk for Tommy. He likes a hot, milky drink if he wakes up at this time. I'll go and get him." "Sure, Mrs. Morris," agreed Marcy. She just adored chubby little Tommy, and didn't mind helping out with him before she joined her friends upstairs. Olivia, meanwhile, had just recounted her story to her friend. "But what on earth were you doing standing in the cemetery?" asked Natasha. Olivia turned to Natasha, aghast. "Because you told me to meet you there in your note," she replied. "In my note? What note? The one I passed you in French?" "Oh, no, not again," thought Natasha. "Let me see the note, Olivia. I know I didn't ask you to meet me at the cemetery. I just know I didn't. Let me see the note, please." Olivia took the note, now tattered, from her jacket pocket and handed it to her friend. Sure enough, excuse me. Sure enough, the note said what Olivia had said it did, except it was even more frightening. "See you at 7 at the cemetery. Look for Susanna Craigson's tombstone." Susanna Craigson. The grave Natasha had noticed for the first time the other day. Natasha shook her head in disbelief. "I have no idea what on earth is going on here, Olivia. I swear I did not write at the cemetery on the note. I just wrote, 'See you at 7.' I mean, you know how I feel about graves and things. There was just no way I would have asked you to hang around there waiting for me." She sighed deeply. "I don't know what to do, Olivia. You do believe me, don't you?" "Yes, Natasha, but only because it's you, and I've known you too long to think you would ever deliberately frighten me. But it still doesn't solve the mystery. What on earth is happening here? First, my full name was written on the initial note, then the words seemingly added on the second note, and then that person outside just now." Olivia started to shake again. "We'd better get ourselves together before Marcy joins us. We don't want to frighten her to death with some half-baked story about notes and ghostly apparitions," said Natasha. "Half-baked story?" protested Olivia. "Yes, I know what you saw, and I believe you," said Natasha. But will anybody else? Honestly, we should keep this whole thing under wraps until we know exactly what's going on. So, what's Elise coming to the party as? Asked Marcy as she glued some more sequins on Olivia's dress. Olivia had decided to go as a gangster girl. She was a real old movie buff and had just finished watching a slew of gangster movies where all the girls wore sequenced dresses, fur stoles, and glossy red lipstick. Don't know, she hasn't mentioned it, replied Olivia. Don't think for a minute it'll be anything less than glamorous, though. I can't imagine Elise doing anything remotely unglamorous. Can you? Natasha smiled. Well, we're not exactly dressing down for the event, are we? What are you coming as, Marcy? Hey, listen, if you don't have a costume yet, why don't you come as Al Capone? You know, the infamous Chicago gangster? Then you could match Olivia. You could borrow some of my dad's stuff, Marcy. Are you listening to a word I'm saying? Yes, I hear you, she replied, and thanks. It's just that my mom said she would find a costume for me. Something about family tradition. Natasha and Olivia exchanged glances but said nothing. Sometimes they wondered about Marcy's family. She seemed to have a very strict upbringing, maybe because she was the only child, they guessed. Olivia threw a rolled-up leather belt in Natasha's direction. Made you this. It's an asp. Cleopatra needs a snake. Natasha screamed loudly, Get that away from me! There's no way I'm putting an asp near me. Cleopatra or not. Natasha's bedroom door was pushed open to reveal Mrs. Morris standing in the hallway. If you girls wake Tommy up again, you won't be going to the Halloween dance, she threatened. And that is the end of Chapter 4. Tune in next video to hear Chapter 5, Library Research. And this has been Ruby, signing off.